marches, now the politics. How will this all play out, and who will win at the ballot box and in the PR battle? The Parkland kids who want tighter gun laws, or the NRA and Republicans who say not so fast? Then, will all the affair allegations against the president actually hurt the GOP in November? Some Republicans are already saying yes, while others are saying in 2018, does it still matter? Also, everyone knows you sacrifice privacy when you go on Facebook, but people didn't sign on for getting involved in a presidential election and possibly even swaying it. First, the posting, tonight, the fallout. Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. We'll have all that, plus we'll head out to Long Island for the corruption probe in Mangano. But tonight, we begin with the gun debate and where we go from here. Now, Florida Senator Bill Nelson, a Democrat, he says we are going all the way to the midterms where this will be a big issue.
This time it's different because these students are speaking out and they're demanding, and they're all on social media. And I think they're going to have an effect on the next election. And that's what's going to be required. You're going to have to start changing things in election.
November's a long time away. Do you think we're going to be talking about this in November?
I know we are in Florida because these students are going to keep it up. And if they're not old enough to vote, they're going to convince their parents.
All right, so at least that's one lawmaker who told me in D.C. this past Saturday at the March for Our Lives that it is going to be an election issue. But where else beyond Florida is the question. Now, you saw hundreds of thousands of people, probably 750,000 in our nation's capital. Hundreds of other cities participated in rallies. People certainly stood up and took notice. Now, it even got the attention of a retired Supreme Court Justice, John Paul Stevens. He penned an amazing op-ed in the Times. I want to read a portion of it. Quote, "Rarely in my lifetime have I seen the type of civic engagement school children and their supporters demonstrated in D.C. and other major cities throughout the country this past Saturday. That support is a clear sign to lawmakers to enact legislation prohibiting civilian ownership of semi-automatic weapons, increasing the minimum age to buy a gun from 18 to 21, and establishing more comprehensive background checks on all purchases of firearms. But the demonstrators should seek more effective and more lasting reform. They should demand a repeal of the Second Amendment, concern that a national standing army might pose a threat to security of the separate states led to the adoption of that amendment. Today, that concern, a relic of the 18th century. Now, even the Parkland kids aren't asking to go that far to get rid of the Second Amendment, but they do have a list of laws that they're pushing for, and some the same as Justice Stevens wants. Universal background checks. They want to raise the age for gun purchases from 18 to 21. They want to ban assault weapons, and they also want to ban those bump stocks. Now, the Parkland students, they're getting a lot of traction, but they're also getting a lot of pushback from the right. I want to give you a sample.
This is the problem with letting children write news stories. The articles tend to be dumb, and intentionally or not, they tend to be inaccurate and dishonest. The self-righteous kids screaming at you on television over the weekend aren't helping at all.
How about kids, instead of looking to someone else to solve their problem, do something about maybe taking CPR classes or trying to deal with situations that where there is a violent shooter that you
how
can
are they looking at other people to...
They have a right to speak out, and they should. But forgive me if I don't want a lesson on the Second Amendment from a 16-year-old. Forgive me if I don't want to watch a 9-year-old tell me that her dream is a world without guns. My world, I want a world without Islamists. I wish that was true, too. It's just not the case. So the reality is the Second Amendment's not about hunting. It's not about self-defense only. It's about free people and checks on a tyrannical government, in addition to all those other things.
And that Fox News host then went out and said, what I did today was I contributed to the NRA. So there you go. A lot to unpack, and let's bring in our panel to help us with that. Vinny Blasquez, he ran George Pataki's campaign for president and Joe Loda's campaign for New York mayor. Republican strategist Joe Pinion, he joins us, as does Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. Okay, there's an open question. It's March now. November, a long way away in political terms, but there's already another walkout planned on the anniversary of Columbine next month. I'm telling you, I don't know, maybe it's a geographical thing, but this thing is not going to go away, I think. So, first do it locally. Vinny, you got certain Republicans in the Northeast that are in really tight races in swing districts right now, and every issue hurts. They're not going to say what I heard Santorum say here, which is kids pipe down, right? But how worried are they that this issue could hurt them, again, in a blue state?
In a blue state, it's going to be a little nerve-wracking. But what you saw in all the media coverage was the emotion behind the gun lobby. You know, former Justice Stevens, I think, did a great disservice to those seeking gun control by putting out an op-ed with the title "Repeal the Second Amendment." I mean, if you play that forward, the only people who are going to be left with guns is the government, and that is exactly what the Second Amendment
That's
thought.
not true. That's not true at all. That's
Well,
not
oh no,
true.
and
That's not true at all.
and bad people.
All it does is remove the right, so that driving a car is a privilege. Owning a gun would be a privilege. I mean,
But let's agree to this. For
So then
time
the only
purposes,
people,
that's not going to happen. Nobody thinks we're going to repeal the Second
But then
Amendment.
the only people who have the right to have the arms is the government, which is the philosophy
Vinny,
behind
I will
it.
grant you this much, so
But-
we don't debate it. That will not happen
But that
in our
threw-
lifetimes.
but that
repealing
threw,
the
but that
Second
threw a
Amendment.
whole wrench in what those kids were trying to do, in that it galvanized the NRA and gun rights voters.
Okay, except in Florida, which didn't vote for Hillary, okay? In Florida, post-Parkland, Joe, they did agree about raising age. They did agree about the bump stocks, okay? And they talked about more comprehensive, not as far as the kids want here, background checks. They didn't talk about assault weapons. That didn't even come up. And they even said some educators could be armed. The point is there an appetite, or would it be wise for the Republican Party to, if not to Vinny's point, going all the way, to go halfway there and to say, we're not going to go kicking and screaming, we're going to even advocate, because we can read the polls, to do some form of additional reform?
Look, I think there is an appetite there for Republicans to get some of these common sense legislations in place. I think, again, I'm going to keep saying it until I've been from every mountaintop, that you have everyone from Orrin Hatch to, everyone from Pat Roberts, the senator from Kansas. You have people like Marco Rubio who have said from the beginning that bump stocks were not something that they thought were appropriate. They've had individuals who have said that we need to have more comprehensive background checks. So these are things that I think absolutely, positively can get done if Democrats, I think, also were united in their effort to seek those remedies. I think that, again, one of the things that has gone underreported and the things that we don't talk about is that there is this fissure within the Democratic Party about exactly which direction they want to go to. Are they going to, again, try to find those Republicans on the other side of the aisle who, again, were appalled and mortified in the same way that they were by what is occurring? Or are they going to listen to those I call them loud minority voices, who are, again, nodding their head reading that op-ed?
Would you agree to Joe's point, Andrew, that if there weren't any cameras, C-SPAN wasn't around, right? And all 100 senators got in the room and they said, all right, raise a hand here. If you guys want to do better background checks, we raise the age to 21 here. Forget about assault weapons for a minute. We get rid of these bump stocks. I bet you get 70 of them say, I'm up for that. Don't you think?
I don't know if it would be that high. I mean, certainly I think you would get more support for background checks. I think there'd be a little bit less support for raising the age to 21. And bump stocks would probably be around the same place. It's difficult for the Republican Party to pull a 180 after going through decades of being the pro-gun party, to then all of a sudden turn around in the face of public opinion or wavering public opinion and say we're going to change our standing. I mean, it's the equivalent of the Democrats saying we're not going to be pro-choice.
Okay, but I heard two messages in D.C. when I was there, which was the kids said, we'll take some incrementalism here, but we're not stopping there. Those are two different things, because if you go remember post-Sandy Hook, right, NRA came out and it was an idiotic statement, tone deaf, to the point where Republicans were like, whoa, that went too far. But there was an insistence on a package of reforms that included an assault weapons ban, and they weren't going to take some, half measure. Do you think now there's more of an appetite to take whatever incrementalism and keep trying to build on it, or they believe the momentum's now in their hands and they're going to take the whole package or nothing at all?
Are you saying on the Democratic side or on the protester
Democratic side?
I think there would be more of an appetite for some incrementalism. Yes, Democrats would risk losing the issue, which I think they think is a winning issue going into November. But I think a lot of Democrats are at the point where they would take whatever they can get on this to show progress, and also as a matter of public safety.
Yeah, okay, so Vinny, let me take that and say to you, you're advising FASO. You're advising Leonard Lance, whatever, okay? And these guys say, all right, Vinny, what do I do here? They get a question in the debate, are you ready to get rid of bump stocks? Okay, are you ready to raise the age from 18 to 21? Now, they're not deep in Arkansas here. They're in New Jersey or they're in the Hudson Valley. What do you counsel them to say there?
Yeah, I think you have to go to half measures, but you have to be cognizant. And I agree with you. As Democrats, you don't want to cede the issue, and as Republicans, you don't want to give too much, because both sides, you can open yourself up to a primary challenge. I mean, that was one of the threats. I think one of the threats that came about that shut the potential for positive reform going forward, right after.
So, do you think if
that's why
you're
I don't think you're gonna see changes
McConnell,
right
if you're
now.
McConnell or Ryan, will they even let a floor vote happen for this or no?
No.
You agree?
I don't think so. I think also what Democrats are not talking about is the fact that, if you go back to pre-Parkland, I think that it was it was probably likely that Democrats were going to take the House and probably had a good shot at taking the Senate. I think that now when you talk about the fact that there are 10 Democratic seats that are in red states, places where actually
Joe
Donald Trump
Manchin
won.
in West Virginia is a perfect example. Yeah.
There has to be some effort on the Democratic side to understand that you could, in part, go too far on this issue in a midterm year where, in the interest of an issue, where even if you believe that you're on the right side of history, you could actually end up costing yourself the majority.
And the generic ballot's closing. Why would you have?
You could-
You haven't taken any action on it.
You get a vote right now, it kills Leonard Lance and John Faso because it sticks them in an impossible position. They have to vote either against their party and risk primaries, or their base not turning out, or
John Faso is not going to lose a primary because he says no to bump stocks. And I think, again, if you look at the gut reaction of Republicans from the West Coast to East Coast, North to South, in the wake of that tragedy, that heinous crime in Las Vegas, I think that it's very apparent that there is absolutely an appetite there to get something done
I'll
there.
only say this: nobody gave that message to the NRA, though. They're not even inching. Okay, we'll come back here. Remember when, it wasn't that long ago, a lot of people, but mostly Republicans on the Hill, screaming with moral outrage about one Bill Clinton and his moral failings? Well, some of those same people now, well, they're staying quiet when it comes to the president, whether it be the porn star or the Playboy Playmate. These affair allegations and more. What's going on here? We'll talk about that after this.